Today's talk is called Two Arrows in Activation, and that will make sense, hopefully, as I start explaining what that is. So the Two Arrows story is an ancient story. It's thousands of years old. So these are psychological principles that haven't changed much and have been known for a long time. So the parable is there are two arrows. The first arrow that hits us, and sort of like an actual arrow or an unexpected event or situation, an illness, something bad that happens, causes us great pain and hardship. It hurts. The second arrow is our reaction to this pain and hardship. It's in our mind. The second arrow is sometimes called suffering. And it's that arrow which we can minimize. It's very hard. It's completely normal and natural to have that second arrow reaction, but being aware of it, you can start taking steps to minimize it. So pain and hardship are unavoidable for everyone. Everybody's going to have sickness and pain and suffering and loss. It's just part of being human. But how we deal with that is what decides whether we're going to suffer or not. So we all know we're going to have a loss, but that doesn't mean we're going to have to suffer for years because of that loss. So pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Another way to look at this is suffering equals pain times resistance. So people who resist reality, and this has also been shown in modern science, but the more you resist reality, the worse it gets. So if you have a pain in your back and then you spend hours thinking, this is so unfair, I can't believe that, how could I be so stupid that I fell, and that doctor's a quack and everybody's out to get me, and this is the worst, and that's going to make the actual pain worse than if you just say, hell, that's pain, I can feel it, I know what it is, I'll take steps to mitigate it, but that's it, I'm not going to dwell on it. Easier said than done. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. Does anybody know what that is? That's a tough one. Goodfellas, nice, well done.
It says Goodfellas on the flyer. I thought you were pointing,
so that's good.
I thought you were pointing to something in the picture. I was like, what is he?
So Goodfellas, the homes where the wives would spend their days would get warrants, and the cops would come periodically. And some of the wives would, like this character, would just say, come on in, do you want some coffee? They wouldn't create that second arrow. They know that this is the reality. They know cops are coming into their home. There's nothing they can do about it. So they kind of went with it. But she would have friends that would spit on the floor at the feet of the cops. And she said, she used to, talking about another wife, she used to spit on her own floor. That never made sense to me. And the sense is, it's the second arrow. It's something that we all do. So it's a nice little modern parable for the second arrow, the spit on the floor.
Later in that movie, though, she flushed the dope and he got mad, creating probably that second arrow.
Oh, that's right.
Because he wasn't happy about that at all.
That's right. That's a good, very nice. I can put that in the next lecture. So the target letter is the first arrow. Many, many officers have gotten target letters in this department and all around the country. It could be painful, shocking, stressful. And there are things you can do to deal with that first arrow. Gather information, understand the process, know what you did or didn't do, know what you're being accused of. Do what you can do. Write things down is important. That was from an HR website that I saw. Collect any evidence. And if you're guilty, then just know what the consequences are. But what happens often is that second arrow kicks in. For everybody. I'm not saying you're abnormal if you have the second arrow reaction. And then you start to fight reality. So that's you versus reality. You're never going to win. The system is terrible. You ruminate about what happened. I can't believe this happened. I did everything right. Or how did I do this wrong? Or why did they turn me in? Why are they ratting me out? Et cetera, et cetera. And then you worry about the future. I'm going to quit. I'm going to retire. I'm going to, whatever the thoughts may be. Your head may throb. This is all second arrow stuff. This was also from an HR website. Your head may throb with angry and resentful thoughts. You may feel resentful and confused because you have no clue why this happened. You may feel frustrated that the administration is wasting your time asking questions about what you feel is a fabricated situation. And if you overreact, you could be demonstrating firsthand for the investigator that what the complaint says you indeed is true. So if you're acting hot-headed and that was the complaint, doesn't help you. So this is another quote that I like, that all change happens in the present moment. This was, I attribute it to Kabat-Zinn, but doesn't matter really who it is. And if you think about it, we always think, oh, in the future, I'm going to change. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But everything, every little change you want to make, if you want to lose weight, you want to do anything, you want to exercise, it always happens in the present moment, always. So if you want to exercise, now's the time. No amount of rumination can change the past. No amount of worry can fix the future. Learned helplessness. So this is how a lot of people might feel at their job. So, and these are horrible experiments that they don't do anymore. They're like from the 60s, I think. And so that's a beagle, and they would put him in a box, and there would be a sound and a light. And after the sound and light came on, he'd get a shock, or she. And to get away from the shock, they would have to jump over the fence to the other floor, and they'd be safe. And they would periodically get shocked and jumped and shocked and jumped, and they did it with rats too. But then the experimenters just shocked them on both sides. So they would get a light and they'd jump and they'd be shocked, and they just gave up eventually. And that's the learned helplessness. They'd hear the light, hear the sound, and they wouldn't jump. They would just get shocked. And even if it was changed back where if they jumped over, they'd be safe. They just give up, and that's called learned helplessness, and it's a model for depression. Cops often get the I used to syndrome. I used to do this, I used to do that. And that's part of that learned helplessness. You feel like you've been beaten down by life, that you're not engaging in the activities that you enjoy, like flying a jet plane.
I used to do that.
So this leads to a vicious cycle. Inactivity as a result of depression and helplessness. So you start to feel depressed, and then you don't want to do anything. And then you don't do anything, so you feel more depressed. And you guys can figure it out. It's a pretty straightforward diagram there. So what can you do? So here's another famous quote. If your life is hellish, and if you're going through hell, keep going. So don't stop, just keep moving forward. And it worked for the British. So this is something I put into a lot of my lectures. It's from the FAA website. So we've often heard about, put your mask on first before you put on somebody with you if there's turbulence, and I agree with that, and that's a great analogy. This one I like just as much, and it's called, this is from the FAA website, Aviate, Navigate, and Communicate. So if you're in a crisis situation, you're flying your plane, obviously this is an analogy for your life. If you're flying your plane and there's rough weather and you don't know what's going on and you're afraid you're going to crash, the first thing you want to do is fly the plane. And that's always the primary thing, fly the plane, fly the plane. But what people often do is they start to communicate, they start to navigate, they get on the line and try to reach somebody frantically, and then they can't explain what's happening because they're not flying the plane, and then they crash. And this really happens. And that really happens in our lives too. We're going through a divorce, we're going through a tough time, and we forget to just fly the plane. And in this analogy, flying the plane is keep eating 3 square meals a day, keep going to bed at the same time. Don't start drinking, continue to hang out with your friends, even if it's not as fun as it used to be. Continue to go to the gym, just fly the plane of your life, as opposed to, complaining and worrying about the future, which is navigating and communicating. Okay, behavioral activation therapy. Behavioral activation therapy is a very well documented therapy, and one that I use for patients often and myself. And it is what it is. You're feeling depressed, get up and go do something. And that's really it. Go to the gym. Make sure you do something. Make sure you go out with a friend, even if you don't want to. If you want to get over the depression, what are you willing to endure? And are you willing to endure going out with your friends and maybe not having so much fun? Self-efficacy is very important. You want to set goals that you can achieve. So if you're feeling depressed and someone says, you need to go to the gym 5 days a week and exercise half an hour a day because that's what the research shows, that's not going to happen. So what you want to do is you want to get to the step on the ladder here where you feel like you can do it. Well, I can go to the gym maybe 1 day a week for half an hour. I feel like I can do that. Do you really feel like you do that? Yes, I think that's easy. I think that you want to do what sounds easy, and then you do that. So we've probably all been taught about SMART goals at some point. So this is just a reminder. You want your goal to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. Attainable is probably the key one here. How often do I feel like I can actually go to the gym? And then write it down and write it in the calendar. I will go to hang out with friends. We put all our work stuff in a calendar, but when it comes to like exercising or hanging out with friends, we often don't put it in there. And that is the end of the lecture. And I will turn this over to Melissa if she wants to go over some of these.
Sure, yeah. Good morning, everyone. This is Melissa Schultz with APD Peer Support. So we've added a slide here that we're going to go over every month for some national resources for y'all. Some of these are law enforcement specific and some are for all first responders. So the first one is Copline. Y'all may have heard of it. It's a international hotline for law enforcement officers. They do offer peer support as well as resources and referrals to other mental health providers. So that number is 1-800-COPLINE. Their website is also copline.org. Then we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I'm sure lots of y'all have heard of this or utilized it, perhaps with people in the community or through other outlets, but it's important to remember that they are available for us as well. So the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. And it's important to know that in July of this year, we will also have the 988 resource. And so that will be, like 911, we'll be able to just dial 988 and get directly to this number, but that hasn't started yet. So if you are looking for more resources, things to read, articles, stuff like that, their website is really, really wonderful. And that website is suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Also, the Veterans Crisis Line is at that same phone number, and you just push option 1. That will connect you with a, for veterans, that will connect you with a employee of the Veterans Administration. And it's specific to that population. Also, our local within New Mexico website for Veterans Crisis is activeheroes.org. And then I have 2 more. Peer support for all first responders is called Hope for Emergency Responders Organization. The acronym is HERO. So their number is 844-833-HERO. That is available for all of our fire, police, corrections, communications, as well as medical personnel that deal EMTs, paramedics, emergency room staff. So that's a great resource. And then the last one I will mention is NAMI. Again, anyone who's working in mental health is familiar probably with this organization, but in the last 2 years, they have added a specific page for public safety professionals. And honestly, I was looking at it yesterday. It is the most comprehensive website that I have found for resources for first responders. It really is amazing, so it's worth checking out. If you go to NAMI.org, it's the web address is super long and tedious, but just look for the tab that says Public Safety Professionals. It really is great. Also, that's their 1-800 number there. That's a crisis line. You can also chat through the website or text and chat that way. So those are just a couple of nationwide resources. We typically include in our email some local resources for us here in New Mexico and APD, but we wanted to add this slide to make sure that y'all knew what was available to us throughout the US. So